Hello and welcome, I'm Thomas Porteous and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines of this hour. Iran says indirect talks with the US in Oman start positively but offer no clear way to ease fears of a US attack. Tehran warns deep mistrust remains after past US strikes, with future talks still uncertain. The US and Ukraine discuss a March target for a peace deal with Russia, but territorial disputes make delays likely. Any agreement would be put to a Ukrainian referendum held alongside national elections. Islamic State claims responsibility for a suicide bombing at a mosque in Islamabad that kills at least 31 people and wounds 169. The group says the attacker detonates an explosive vest amid a Shiite congregation. Donald Trump reposts a video depicting Barack and Michelle Obama as apes before removing it after backlash. The post draws bipartisan condemnation, with Senator Tim Scott calling it racist. Trump signs an order warning of new US tariffs on countries that continue to trade with Iran, citing a possible 25% rate. The move comes as US-Iran talks continue in Oman, with Trump restating opposition to Iranian nuclear weapons. The Milan Cortina Winter Olympics began with an opening ceremony spread across 4 locations led from San Siro. Dual cauldrons are lit in Milan and Cortina as Andrea Bocelli performs Nessun Dorma. The White House plans the first leaders' meeting of Trump's Board of Peace on Gaza on February the 19th. The talks, still in early stages, are set to include a Gaza reconstruction fundraiser. Investigators examine a newly surfaced message in the search for the missing mother of US journalist Savannah Guthrie. Authorities say the message is being checked for authenticity as the search enters a 6th day. We start this hour in Eastern Europe. An airspace in southeastern Poland has been closed again due to unplanned military activity. Lublin Airport is currently inaccessible, with NATO aircraft operating in the area, according to Flight Radar 24. Earlier this year, both Lublin and Rzeszów airports briefly suspended operations for routine military exercises, with authorities stressing there was no threat to Polish airspace. Officials have not reported any incidents or security breaches linked to the current closure. Travellers are advised to check for updates as operations remain temporarily suspended. We'll continue to bring you all of the news coming out of Poland as soon as we get it here on NewsX World and find out what is causing that situation. Now we turn over to the US, and President Trump has signed an executive order threatening tariffs on countries that continue doing business with Iran. The order sets up a legal framework to impose duties on goods imported from nations that purchase or trade Iranian products, although it does not immediately apply new tariffs. The White House says the move targets what it calls the Iranian regime and aims to curb Tehran's economic lifelines. Officials from the State and Commerce Departments will now determine which countries could face penalties and how steep those tariffs may be. The measure could impact major US trading partners, including India, Turkey and China, and comes even as Washington and Tehran hold diplomatic talks to ease tensions. Joining us on this discussion is Yossi Kubawasa, an Israeli intelligence and security expert, joining us live from Tel Aviv. US Donald Trump laying that groundwork out there for tariffs on countries continuing to trade with Iran. Is this economic coercion designed to strengthen the US leverage in those ongoing talks?
Good morning. Yes, for sure, this is the purpose to increase the pressure on the Iranian regime while they are conducting negotiations on the future of their nuclear project and the future of their ballistic missile project and the future of the regime, as a matter of fact. So while they are threatening to take all kinds of military steps against the Americans if the United States does anything against Iran, it's just natural that the Americans will put more pressure on them, and this is one of the major ways of doing that. Since, in spite of the world sanctions against Iran, some countries, including those you mentioned before, and especially China, buy Iranian oil, and by that enable the regime to put more pressure on its population and conduct such massacres as they did in early January.
Yossi, what were your thoughts? Of course, those talks wrapped up between the Americans and the Iranians yesterday, both saying positive things, that they were productive and they're going to meet again next week, indirectly, of course, as before. However, as soon as these meetings were concluded, these sanctions snapped into action. What's your analysis on the American way of going about things here?
First of all, my impression is that the talks concentrated on procedures. What exactly is going to be included in the talks? Where are they going to be held? When are they going to be held? And all kinds of other issues that do not represent real progress. And they still are far away from each other on the issues themselves. What's going to happen with the Iranian nuclear project? And to what extent these talks are going to put limits on the ballistic missiles project and the support of Iran to terror organizations around the Middle East, and especially on limitations on what the Iranian regime can do to protesters inside Iran. These are the issues that in which there's no progress until now, and I doubt if there's going to be progress, because these are existential matters for both sides in these negotiations. So the fact that they didn't end up on the first meeting with nothing and went home to go on with the military threats, this is a good sign, but it doesn't mean much. And that's why, while the Iranians keep doing all kinds of steps that threaten the entire world, like testing the Khorramshahr 4 missile, long-range missile, and threatening to conduct exercises in the Hormuz Straits and so on and so forth, the Americans also have their way of threatening Iran by threatening to put all kinds of tariffs on countries that buy products from Iran. This is where we stand right now. The expectations in my mind are low because it's going to be difficult to reach an agreement. But both sides want to make sure that everybody knows that they did an effort to avoid military conflict, and this is important for both sides.
Yossi, of course, we've seen when it comes to other conflicts and people that the United States have tensions with, we've seen the US put a 25% extra tariff on India over the purchase of Russian oil. The Iranians, of course, have their own customers. Can the US realistically pressure major economies like China, like India, without triggering trade retaliation from them both? And do you think that it will impose this maximum 25% tariff, which, of course, is substantial?
Yes, they may do that. They didn't start doing that yet. It's just a threat, but they may do it, and this is going to have an impact on the readiness of these countries to buy Iranian products, especially Iranian oil. It's the current administration in Washington, led by President Trump, is very big believer in tariffs and their capability to bring about change in the attitudes and policies of countries that are affected by it. And until now, it was proven to be effective, and maybe this time too.
Yes. Yossi, do stay with us as we turn to our next story. And the White House is preparing for the first leaders' meeting of President Trump's Board of Peace, set for February the 19th. The gathering will focus on Gaza, with plans to discuss the ongoing ceasefire and fundraising efforts for Gaza's reconstruction. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will meet Trump just a day earlier on February the 18th, ahead of the discussions. However, the formation of this board has raised concerns globally, with reports highlighting that it may undermine the UN's role and resemble colonial oversight of Gaza. Meanwhile, despite the fragile ceasefire established in October in Gaza, it continues, with over 550 Palestinians and 4 Israeli soldiers killed since then. This ongoing conflict has sparked debate, with many questioning the effectiveness of the ceasefire and the board's ability to mandate peace. Yossi joins us once again. So the Board of Peace is meeting on the 19th of this month, but only following a Trump-Netanyahu meeting. Two leaders, well, of course, in the American terms, have met each other more than any other over Donald Trump's first term. What does this signal that the Israeli Prime Minister is meeting Donald Trump before this?
Well, it signals that this entire project of the Board of Peace and the bodies that were built underneath it is a project that is a joint project of Israel and the United States, or the United States and Israel. And Israel is very much interested in seeing progress. But so far, there's little progress, and most of the progress is focused on building all kinds of bodies. The Board of Peace, the Gaza National Committee and things like that, but the situation on the ground has not changed much. We still have Hamas governing most of the areas that are not governed by Israel. We still have exchange of fire and terror attacks almost on a daily basis that force Israel to retaliate. And something has to be done about that. Having this meeting is necessary in order to show progress and in order to show activities towards the end goal of a better future for everybody in the region, including the Palestinians living in Gaza. But this is not going to materialize if you don't touch the elephant in the room, which is the fact that nothing has been done in order to disarm Hamas. And I think that what Prime Minister Netanyahu is going to tell President Trump, and this is going to be the message for everybody else, who is part of the Board of Peace, that we have to disarm Hamas, and this is a crucial element of the plan. And without it, there's not going to be any meaning to the promises of support and financial aid to the reconstruction of Gaza, because there's not going to be any reconstruction as long as Hamas is in power. And that's why the focus should be on convincing Hamas to disarm. And if this is not going to work, there might be a necessity to take military actions in order to disarm them. And this is the core of the matter right now.
And the Board of Peace itself, Yossi, do you think it's worthy of all the criticism it's getting? Those leaders invited, including, of course, Benjamin Netanyahu, Vladimir Putin, Alexander Lukashenko, other problematic leaders with, some would say, bad human rights records being invited to this Board of Peace. And of course, the exclusion of Palestinians in an enclave, which is, at the end of the day, their territory. Do you believe that the criticism of this body is correct?
I can fully understand the criticism of this body. We would like to see a different group of people sitting there. Not the Palestinians necessarily, because they are supporters of terrorism, so there's no point in putting them on board. First of all, they have to go through all kinds of reforms, as mentioned in the plan itself. Once they go through these reforms and accept the existence of Israel as a Jewish state, and stop incitement and stop paying salaries to terrorists, then we can think about joining them to the Board of Peace. The purpose of the Board of Peace is promoting peace, not promoting terrorism. So that's about the Palestinians. But the others, yes, we would like to see more people involved and participating in this board. I think it's open for them. Once they decide to join, they can. The problem is that they are afraid that this is going to replace the United Nations. There's a big problem with the United Nations. That's why there is this fear. That everybody understands that the United Nations does not deliver what is expected from this body, and it's a problematic body. That's what President Trump said, and that's why But that's why we formed the Board of Peace. And I think that everybody understands that in order to be effective, it has to be led by President Trump, and not by the Security Council that would give veto capability to everybody that is against the goals of the United States. And this is something that is really important here, that this board is led by the president, and he is the guy who has the capability to veto steps that are not leading towards peace, but rewarding terror.
All right. Yossi, of course, we can't leave without talking about this ceasefire. This comes, of course, as 550 Palestinians have now been killed and 4 Israeli soldiers since the October the 7th ceasefire of last year. Of course, now all the hostages, however, on the upside have now been returned to Israel. There are no hostages in Gaza. We're now talking about moving on to phase 2. Given that this sheer violence has continued, of course not at the scale that it was previously, but it has. Do you have any hopes for phase 2, the, of course, disarmament of Hamas, among other different clauses that seem pretty far from reach, as phase 1 hasn't been an all-out success?
I beg to differ. I think that phase 1 was a big success. Releasing all of the hostages, including the bodies of the deceased hostages. This was a major breakthrough and a very good move, and even created some sort of trust between the parties. It was a good move, even though, of course, Hamas didn't perform it as they committed to, and to deliver all the bodies immediately after signing the agreement. But nevertheless, stage 1 was a success. Stage B is much more problematic, and we are moving towards into stage B. We are already in stage 2. We have formed the NJAC was formed. The Board of Peace Executive Committee is functioning under Minister Nadenov, and there is action. The only problem is that they didn't manage yet to convince Hamas to disarm. That's the big obstacle that stands between moving forward towards reconstruction and providing the Palestinian people prosperity and the ability to conduct productive life, and between providing Israelis the security they are looking for, is the fact that Hamas refuses to disarm. And that's the only thing that has to be dealt with. And I hope Nadenov is going to find a way, together with President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu, to convince Hamas to disarm. We are looking for the Turks and for the Qataris and for the Egyptians to exert pressure over Hamas to convince them to disarm. If they're going to be successful in that, we should be able to move forward with the stage 2 quite easily. But if they fail, and so far they have failed, we shall see more people losing their lives in the ceasefire, this fragile ceasefire, and this may lead also to the collapse of the ceasefire and to the resumption of military activities in order to disarm Hamas.
Okay, Yossi Kopawasa, thank you so much for taking the time in joining us here on NewsX World. It's a great pleasure to talk to you. We now turn to our next story, and the United Nations has condemned in the strongest terms the deadly suicide bombing at a mosque in Pakistan's capital of Islamabad. Secretary General Antonio Guterres said attacks against civilians and places of worship are unacceptable, and stressed that those responsible must be identified and brought to justice. He also expressed solidarity with the people of Pakistan. Pakistani authorities say at least 31 people were killed and more than 160 injured when a bomber detonated explosives during Friday prayers at a Shiite mosque. Meanwhile, tensions have risen in the region after Pakistan blamed India and Afghanistan for the bombing. Both countries rejected the accusations, calling them baseless and urging Islamabad to address its own security failures. Joining us now is Shruti Dasgupta, an international affairs analyst. She joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much for joining us here on NewsX World. Why is the UN's language significant here in framing these attacks on places of worship as red lines?
Well, one, it kind of identifies that it was a place of worship where people are supposed to feel safe and secure. Two, it kind of feeds into the Islamophobia narrative that is prominent in the world right now. So this particular language, while expressing solidarity and grief with the people of Pakistan, also tries to pacify the forces around the world, the groups, the NGOs that tend to create a larger amount of noise in the name of Islamophobia. But on the latest that we have, despite pointing lovely fingers towards Afghanistan and Pakistan, what we have on the latest now that a Telegram, I believe, post, the ISIS has claimed responsibility for the attack, and this is a part of their ideological fight against Shias, whom they consider heretics. So it was a Shia mosque that was attacked in Pakistan, and this means that now, which is a minority, around 10 to 15% of Pakistan is about Shias, and they have, under Zia al-Haq, in the 1980s, they had taken on the identity of a more Sunni Pakistan, and which had there was also a small time where they were asking the Shias to pay a jizya, a term of extra tax, just for being for following their particular faith. So there has been a Shia-Sunni conflict, which peaked at around the late 80s, and then this particular tax was rolled back, but there has been consistent attacks against Shias, and specifically not just in Pakistan but other places also, where it is their mosques and their places of worship that have been attacked. So this is a longer history of Pakistan and their Shias that has been a community under target. And the ISIS in that particular claim has alleged that the Shias assist the IRGC in Iran and their proxies in Syria, and hence they are taking revenge on Pakistani Shias by targeting them in their mosque. So despite Pakistan trying to frame it as an India problem or an Afghanistan problem, and probably trying to create a narrative which will allow them to attack Kabul again, this particular release by ISIS has kind of cleared the air for everybody. If they now want to attack, they'll have to attack the ISIK, which was what the Taliban has been claiming, that ISI Khorasan province has been established by the Pakistani intelligence agencies along the border of Afghanistan, because ISIK and Taliban are enemies, I sort, or hostile to each other, I can say. So they've been saying this particular thing for the past 2 years, 2025, and even in 2026, they've been making these claims that ISI is hand in glove with ISIK, and this particular attack on a Shia community mosque, as well as the first fingers, immediately pointing towards their neighbors, shows that Pakistani agencies are likely to externalize their problem rather than look inside and see exactly whom they've been feeding into in the name of their support towards Islamic or jihadist groups.
And Islamic State, as you say, have claimed a role in this. And as we've also said, it's the largest suicide bombing in a decade inside the capital of Islamabad. What does this say about the operations of Islamic State inside Pakistan, and what they intended for this attack?
Well, they wanted this shock and awe moment. They wanted to warn Shias from joining, protest groups under the umbrella of Iran. So I do believe, now this is of course my personal opinion now that comes into play, where I feel that since Pakistan has now aligned itself again with USA, and for USA, Iran is a bigger enemy. They want the Shiites group, the Kurds group, all the others that are kind of funded or armed by the IRGC or Iran as such, to be suppressed. And so they have probably, because from what ISI seems to be, at least if not being handlers of ISIK and other groups of terrorists, be effectively in communication with them. So it might be a roundabout way of putting pressure on Iran and its support groups to kind of alter how their recruitment happens, how their support systems happen, how their non-state actors are having a continuous flow of human resource. So for me, that is one of the problems that is being addressed here by allowing ISIS operative, because he walked in, he was right there from what the news reports are stating, that he walked right in, and the guards tried to stop them. They shot the guard, he got shot in the leg, and then he exploded himself out. It could have been a larger one had the guards not been able to injure this particular operative, this Fidain, but they call him a martyr, so they're celebrating it. So I would like to see how now Pakistan is going to address their ISIS problem, which now is there. If they actually feel that every Pakistani, irrespective of their minority or their majority status, is a Pakistani and deserves its protection, I would like to see how they would retaliate against ISIS, because I truly feel that they wouldn't be able to, and they would still try and twist this narrative out and say, okay, investigations are on, after failing to successfully frame either Afghanistan or India in this particular attack.
Shruti Das Gupta, as always, it's a great pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much for joining us here on the broadcast. Now we move to the United States once again, and the US has accused China of secretly testing a nuclear weapon in 2020, calling for a broader arms control treaty that would include Beijing and Moscow. The allegations came at a global disarmament conference in Geneva, just a day after the New START treaty limiting US-Russian nuclear deployments expired. US officials said China used methods to hide yield-producing tests, while Beijing denied the claims, calling them false and blaming the US for escalating the arms race. Experts warn that without a new treaty, the US, Russia and China could expand arsenals, raising the risk of miscalculation amid global tensions. The US has stressed it will maintain a modern nuclear deterrent, while China refuses new negotiations for now, citing its smaller arsenal. Private equity firm Vista Equity Partners are leading a new funding round over $350 million in artificial intelligence chip startup Sambonova Systems, marking a rare departure from its traditional focus on enterprise software. Vista, through a partnership with early-stage venture capital firm Cambium Capital, is investing in the Series E round for the chipmaker and other investors in oversubscribed round, including existing backer Intel Corp, which currently plans to invest about $100 million with potential commitments of up to $150 million. The AI computing startup is seeking the funding to compete with market leader NVIDIA Corp and meet growing demand for interference chips used in AI applications. Well, that's all that we have time for this hour. Keep watching NewsX World for more international news updates.